Hello and welcome to Let's Argue with Jay Play Hard. Today I've got a special guest by the name of Larry Thompson, owner of Grand Slam Sports. How you doing today, Larry?
Doing great, Jay. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you here today, and we just got NFL Combine, so I figured I'd come by and get your thoughts on it. Just to give the listeners a little background on Mr. Thompson's expertise here, he is a former head coach at LaGrange College at Georgia Southwestern State as a women's softball and volleyball coach. Also, he played baseball for Georgia Southern in 88 to 82. So we're definitely going to be picking his brain about baseball, among other things, because I just do not watch it.
Greatest sport ever.
Okay, so let's get it kicked off with some baseball here. So your Braves.
Okay.
You are a big Atlanta Braves fan, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I did see a comparison meme today. 98 Braves lineup versus this current 23 lineup.
No comparison.
No comparison at all. We're talking Chipper Jones, Ryan Kolesko.
Not from a top to bottom of the lineup. Now, you might have had, it's kind of hard to say they were top heavy then, but there's just no comparison 1 to 9. You got to remember the pitchers were hitting back then. And even though the Braves had Maddox and Glavine, who were both very proficient hitters as pitchers, lineup 1 to 9, there is no comparison.
Okay. All right. And so do you think the Braves, I'm hearing greatest lineup ever, greatest team ever. How far do you think this team could go? Obviously, they're the championship favorite, but historical wins record, things like that. What do you think this team can do?
Baseball is so much different than the other professional sports in the fact you've got a 162-game regular season. And once that regular season is over, then your playoffs are condensed. Anybody can get hot in a 5-game series or 7-game series. If you've got 2 hot pitchers, then it doesn't matter if you won 110 ball games during a regular season. If you can't win a 5 or 7-game series with the hot pitchers, then your season's going to be over. Case in point, the Braves last year, and even the year before when they run into red-hot Phillies teams. So it just really depends in baseball as who gets hot at the end of the year. The regular season is great. I think that it's too long. Getting into the playoffs is just, in baseball, is the key. You can be a wild card team. Just get in, get hot. Look who won the World Series. Look who was in the World Series last year. Texas and Arizona. Nobody expected either one of those teams to do anything.
Exactly.
But again, get hot at the right time. Baseball. To answer your question, yes, over a full season, the Braves, I thought had one of the top 3 best lineups in the history of baseball last year. And arguably the greatest single season of a player in what Acuna did. But again, to say they're the greatest team depends on what are they the greatest regular season team? Yes. Are they, the greatest team? Not until they've won some playoff wins some World Series yet.
Okay. All right. So as far as teams in the NL who could give the Braves trouble, you mentioned the red hot Phillies.
Yep.
The Dodgers just added Ohtani, which I think is huge in itself because, they've got a lineup top to bottom. Who else in the NL might you look at as someone who watches baseball on a regular basis as a threat to the Braves?
In Arizona, they made it to the World Series a year ago.
Okay.
Now they're in the same division with the Dodgers, so they've got to navigate that because the Dodgers are just unreal. I never want to count out a team like the Mets, even though they had a horrendous year last year, but they've got the talent, and the Mets are always a team that can make some noise. The East is the Cardinals, the Brewers, the Cubs. Throw them in a hat. They'd pick one out. But in National League, I think, your Dodgers, your Phillies, your Braves, those are going to be your big 3, so to speak.
Okay. All right. Now moving over to the American League. We know the Texas Rangers won the AL last year. I don't watch much baseball, but I did like how hot they got last year, and I did pick them to make it all the way. But the Astros, they're not going anywhere.
No. Astros are very good. Again, their pitching is very good. It's a little older, but it's still very good. They've got the hitters top to bottom. And what a lot of people forget about the Astros is that even though the Altuves of the world and the Bregmans of the world are getting a little bit older, they've still got the Yordan Alvarez's coming up. They've got the Cole Tuckers coming up. So the Astros are in my opinion, they're going to be your odds-on favorite in the American League. And don't count out the Yankees. The Yankees went out and spent some money. And if their pitching comes around, then the Yankees with a Soto, Stanton, Judge, big three, they can bash their way to a lot of wins.
Yeah. I think that's been the Yankees' problem the last few years, the lack of pitching in the postseason. They've kind of had some collapses. Okay, so we talked a little baseball. We kind of figure that your pick to win it all is going to be the Braves, correct?
I'm a homer, but I'm also cautiously optimistic. The Braves are going to be pitching. They're going to have, Strider, Fried are going to have to stay healthy. And then Morton and Sale are going to have to find the fountain of youth to have good years. And then figure out who your fifth starter is. But bullpen-wise, may have the best bullpen in baseball. But the Braves will go as far as their pitching staff. They're going to hit with anybody. They're going to score some runs. I don't think what happened to them in the playoffs last year, they got shut down by the Phillies. And again, that goes back to baseball. You can take a good lineup, and if you throw a Wheeler and a Nola out there who are hot, they can shut down a big-time lineup. But can you do that over an entire season? No. The Braves offensively will be just fine. Pitching is what's going to determine how far they go.
Okay. All right. So moving on to this weekend's NFL Combine. Everybody's talking about the Texas receivers.
Yep.
Everybody's talking about your boy from the Georgia Bulldogs, Ladd McConkey.
Doesn't get the respect he deserves.
I think he's starting to.
I think he is. That 40 time probably made people open their eyes a little bit.
I'll tell you what, I was watching the Senior Bowl, and just what I was hearing from the coaches at the Senior Bowl about Ladd McConkey and the route running. So now you match the route running with the size and the speed, the 4.4 speed. Do you think he ran his way into a first-round pick?
No. I think he's a second-round guy, and the only reason I say that is because wide receiver class this year is so deep. And I think that because of that, and I also think that you mentioned the Texas boys, I think that Worthy did himself just all kinds of favors. So I think McConkey could be late first round, but I think he falls to day two, but he's going to be a hell of a steal in day two for somebody.
Yeah, he's going to be a heck of a player. I agree. I really like Ladd McConkey. He's actually my wide receiver 5 on my list. Now, as far as we'll stick with the SEC, we'll stick with some of those receivers. How do you feel about the LSU receivers? Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Nabers.
LSU just churns out athletes year after year after year. And if you go back and you look at what these NFL teams draft and where they draft, you always can find those skill guys coming out of LSU. They're very ready, NFL ready. And so those guys at LSU, they're going to come right in and make an impact right away.
No doubt. Okay. All right. So we talked about LSU. We talked about Ladd McConkey. We kind of touched on those Texas receivers, but I kind of want to do a little deeper dive because Adonai Mitchell is a former Dog.
Yep.
He is a former Dog. I can't believe he got away from you guys, man. I mean.
Well, it goes back, Jay, and it goes back to that NIL thing. Now, you got A.D. Mitchell, you got Jermaine Burton, who ended up at Alabama, who's also going to get drafted. 2 great receivers that could have, finished their career at Georgia. But again, it's, college football has changed in the fact that even though, people were asking Burton, you win a national championship. Why? And same thing with Mitchell. Why leave? It's called playing time. It's called trying to be the man. Georgia has a history now of going back. Their depth is so good now that there's not going to be one guy. It's going to be a couple of guys or 3 or 4 guys. So I think that's good and bad. If you want to be the man and you want to be the standout, then yeah, you've got to go somewhere else. But if you want to be somewhere that's not going to, run you ragged in college and get you ready for the NFL, then a place like Georgia where you're not going to have to play every single snap of every single game is going to help you. But again, it goes back to the NIL deals. It goes back to ego. It goes back to being, do you want to be the man or do you want to, save your body? It's just a lot that goes into it now.
Yeah. And I also think, if a guy like Ladd McConkey is, let's say he's coming out of Ohio State, I think he's a bona fide,
no doubt,
first round pick because Ohio State does have that goodwill with the NFL of producing these unbelievable receivers. Plus, he's going to get a lot more opportunity in a pass-first offense. But as far as A.D. Mitchell goes, I think this dude's going to be a guy.
No doubt. He's got all the measurables. He's lean. He's I was a big A.D. Mitchell fan when he was at UGA. But yeah, his ceiling is very high. He's going to have a really nice career.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well. Now, the number one receiver in the class, Marvin Harrison Jr., did not work out at the combine. What do you think about these players kind of opting out? Well, the top end guys opting out of the combine and waiting to the pro day.
I don't think it really matters now. I think right now with these guys, they already have a body of work that the scouts can look at from their regular season, okay, and the playoffs. They're going to have their pro days. They're going to find time to sit down and interview them and watch all the tape and this, that thing. I'm not for or against guys going to the combine. I think the combine is a great avenue for a player like Ladd McConkey or somebody that is not a bona fide dude, I think that the combine can open some more eyes. But if you're a Marvin Harrison, if you're a Brock Bowers, if you're a Neighbors, if you're why go? Maybe pull a hammy while you're trying to run the 40 or, so I get it. I get that more than I get opting out of a bowl game or a playoff game.
Oh, we're definitely going to get to that. All you FSU fans out there. But, yeah, I do like the fact that Rome Odunze went out there and competed. Yeah. I think he did do himself.
He did
a lot of favors because now when you see the athleticism along with the size, if I'm a team like, let's say the Chargers, who may be moving on from Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I'm thinking about it. We know the Chargers need to get more youthful on the outside. Now, I know Jim Harbaugh's, he's probably going to go offensive line with that pick, but it does give you something to think about. Is it Neighbors? Is it Odunze as that number 2 guy?
I think he was a maybe top 10 guy, maybe 8, 9, 10. Now he's a top 10 guy. So I think that pretty much solidified it for him.
Without question. Now, moving on to the defensive side. Another deep position in this year's draft is cornerback. I mean, I don't know about you, but I saw 5 guys that were NFL ready,
Kid Toledo is going to be special. He's going to be special. Corners nowadays, it's, tall, long, athletic, speed. Those are the guys that everybody wants, because they've got to go against these tall, athletic, speed wideouts. So, it's kind of a tit for tat. You could take a lot of your wideouts and you could train them to be a hell of a cornerback. You can take your corners, you could train them to be a hell of a wide receiver. I think they go hand in hand.
Okay. All right. So Quinyon is your cornerback 1?
No doubt.
Okay. All right. Now, me personally, I've had Cooper DeJean as cornerback 1 since last year. For me, it's the tackling in the run game that kind of sets him apart for me. But I tell you what, Nate Wiggins showed me
instincts and ball skill. And that's the key. You've either got ball skills or you don't. And I think that's what he showed.
Yeah, I mean, and the hustle plays.
Yeah, no doubt.
The hustle plays, the play against Miami sticks out to me the most because, that affected my guys the most. But Nate Wiggins, 4'2", 940, that guy's a
Just draw.
that guy's a player, and he pulled something running that 4.29. So we talked about Wiggins. We talked about Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, who did not work out recovering from that fibula injury. Another guy that stuck out to me was Kamari Lassiter in the drills. I didn't know his hips were that fluid.
You know, the one thing about Georgia players, and again, being a homer, people can say, well, it's a homer. No. If you go back and look at what Sirianni said, was quoted as saying at the Combine last week, there's a reason Philadelphia drafts Georgia players. These guys are NFL ready. And I think Kirby Smart and his staff do an excellent job of getting guys to be NFL ready. And Kamari Lassiter is just another example of a guy that is going to be, you know, Jay, I'm not sure that Georgia's ever going to have the year in, year out all pro guys in the NFL. But when you talk about 8 to 10 to 12 year NFL careers for solid players that are needed in the NFL, that's what Georgia's going to produce year in, year out, regardless of the position. You know, it used to be Georgia was called running back U.
Yep.
You know, they've gotten away from that now because Georgia produces running backs, quarterbacks, linebackers, offensive line, every line. So it's now not just one position. They're turning out guys, and I think that's in a Kamari Lassiter and a Javon Bullard and some of these other guys that they've got are examples of guys that are going to have nice careers in the NFL.
Yeah, I like Kamari. If I'm the Jaguars, I'm looking at him for our nickel spot. He never gets beat.
Yep.
He's always in position.
Great hands.
Yeah, great. He has more breakups than interceptions, but you know what? You got to be in position to make a play on the ball.
Doubt.
So I do like Kamari Lassiter. Another guy that stuck out to me in the secondary was Daquan Mitchell from Penn State.
You know, I think he's a freak. You know, he's one of those guys that you look at that's just, he looks the part. And that to me, sometimes you get guys that look the part, but they don't back it up. He backs it up. He looks the part and he backs it up.
A lot of those Penn State guys came to the combine and showed out. You know, we'll get to some of them a little later. Now, moving on, staying on defense. One of my favorite positions in all of football, defensive line. I don't think the defensive line gets a lot of love here. So we're gonna try to give some defensive linemen that you noticed in the combine some love.
Man, there were quite a few of those guys. What blows me away now about even D linemen and offensive linemen are the speed these guys have. To see these big men moving like they're moving, it's crazy. And I think Jordan Davis kind of opened eyes of that a few years ago when he went and ran that stupid time that he did. But yeah, I mean, there's so many of them that I'm not really sold on just one or two guys. I think that it's a deep draft there, and same with edge. You know, now I will say from an edge D line, Dallas Turner is my favorite of everybody.
Okay,
I think he is going to be he's going to be special. I think Dallas Turner is going to be, when we look back on this draft, we're going to see that was
he's one of those guys.
He's going to be special. Yeah.
I actually mocked him to Atlanta.
You know, my thing with my mock is that it all depends on the quarterback deal, what Atlanta does there.
Yes.
But in a perfect world, if they address the quarterback situation early on and they still hold on to that 8th pick, you know, I'm not mad getting Dallas Turner, and I'm not mad at getting a Rome Odunze. I'm not mad getting a receiver or an edge guy. That either one's fine.
Could you imagine Rome Odunze, Drake London,
Kyle Pitts,
Cousins,
and you know, don't forget Kyle Pitts. I think Kyle Pitts has been so underutilized. Try to figure out, are you a wideout or are you a tight end? What I think that now that we've got the coaching staff in place that can maximize the potential of a freakish athlete like Kyle Pitts, yes, you put another wide out with those guys and with Bijan that is able to come out of the backfield. Falcons offense again, but it all depends on what we do at quarterback.
I mean, you know, even a guy like Russell Wilson in a situation like that could I think could do wonders. I mean, you guys could be a playoff team. Baker Mayfield was the best quarterback in that
South is there for the take.
So you bring a guy like Russell Wilson in, or even dare I say Justin Fields. I know you. What do you think about Justin Fields possibly to Atlanta?
I'm hearing that it's more than a possibility now, which, I'm okay. We can't do any worse than we were last year with Ritter. So I'm okay with Fields. I'm of the opinion that a lot of people are split with the Falcons. Do they trade for Fields? Do they go out and sign a Cousins? Do they sign a Russell Wilson? Do they go trade for Garoppolo? What? Or do they trade up and try to grab one of these three quarterbacks in the draft? I'm kind of torn there. In a perfect world, I would love to see us get a Fields or a Cousins, draft a Turner or an Odunze. And I really, really, really was hoping that J.J. McCarthy would just stay under the radar and we could grab him in the second or third round. But I will tell you a quarterback who I'm hearing from folks that did himself a lot of favors at the Combine based on his interviews, his intelligence, his throwing way under the radar. And people may laugh when I say this because of his college career. But if you go back and look at his college career and who he's surrounded by, the time he was surrounded by talent, look at what he did. And that's Spencer Rattler. And I think that
I've been hearing a lot about Spencer.
I think that Spencer Rattler is going to be one of those guys that if you can draft and basically bring him along slowly, like a Jordan Love did at Green Bay, then I think you may have a little diamond in the rough there.
I mean, Spencer Rattler was the number one rated quarterback in his class. A lot of people don't remember that about Spencer Rattler, but he beat Texas. His freshman year, he brought Oklahoma all the way back and he beat Texas. So
his offensive line at South Carolina was worse than worse. And so it was really hard for him to showcase his talent level at South Carolina. Spencer Rattler, just remember 5 years from now, let's see what he's doing.
Yeah, he could be one of those second-round guys like a Russell Wilson, who just didn't have the talent around him in college and got to the NFL and blossomed. I like Spencer Rattler a lot. I also think that Joe Milton did himself a lot of favors.
Joe Milton's got all the talent in the world. He's got all the measurables. He's got the freakish arm strength, And Joe Milton just needs to be coached up. I don't know that he got the coaching, and I'm not trying to bash Tennessee because I'm a big Heupel fan, but I think he needs to be coached up a little bit more. And from what I gather, he also needs to grow up a little bit more. And I think if those two things come into place, then again, there's another one. Bo Nix is another one. He's just a winner. Bo Nix is kind of one of those guys that is just he's just going to win wherever he goes.
Yeah, I think the thing with Bo Nix is his age.
Yeah,
especially with this quarterback class, because it's not, it's not the Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers class, but it's a pretty solid class.
It's very solid.
It's a very solid class. So I think the thing with Bo Nix is his age and these younger guys kind of having a little longer tread on the tire, to put it in the best term that I can. But back to J.J. McCarthy, because we did talk about him a little bit. To me, he's the most unknown commodity at quarterback in this draft.
Smart, cerebral, arm strength is not off the charts, but it's not bad. Runner. He is just, people want to say he's a game manager, a Brock Purdy type. And that may be the best comp for him would be a Brock Purdy type player. But to be quite honest with you, Jay, I think that he can be better than Purdy. I think he's got that little it factor. I think he's got a little bit of stuff in him that will transfer really nicely to the NFL game.
Yeah, I think JJ is one of those guys who does what the coaching staff and the game plan ask of him, even though he may be capable of more. Because at Michigan, it was all about defense, running the football. I like to call them Georgia North, the way they're built, physical up front, run the football, play action. But the thing about JJ is how young he is. I think he turns 21 in a few months.
I'm not a Harbaugh fan, and that a lot of people may cringe to hear me say that, but I'm not a Harbaugh fan at all. And I think that J.J. McCarthy, outside of Harbaugh, is going to get even better. Because you're right, Harbaugh is a stubborn type coach that it's my way or the highway, I feel like. And I think that the reins were kind of pulled on McCarthy during his collegiate career. And I think if you let him go a little bit more, I think you're going to unlock even more potential and talent that kid has.
Yeah, the Alabama game showed me a lot. He made a lot of plays in that fourth quarter and in overtime to get them over the hump. And to me, that's what I want our quarterback to be the best. The big moment, the big stage against the big time defense. And he did that.
Sure he did.
He did that. So looking for J.J. McCarthy to do big things. I think he goes top 10 after the combine. Moving on to...
Wow. Really?
I think so. I already had him going to Minnesota at 12, I believe. I think it was 12, Minnesota, wherever they're drafted. But after the combine, and so many teams in the top 10 or wanting to trade up to the top 10, like the Raiders.
All right, hold on, Jay. I'm sorry. This is your show, but I've got to ask. So you've got him. So I was going through my head real quick. You got your top 3 quarterbacks. So there's 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You got your top 3 wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's 6.
Yep.
You got your top 2 offensive linemen. That's 8. Dallas Turner's 9. So you're putting McCarthy in over another wide out, over a Brock Bowers, who's, let's face it, I know he's a tight end, but he may be the freakiest athlete in the entire draft, over any other defensive player, period, because of the top 10 we just named, there's only one defensive guy there.
Yeah.
No corners, no safeties, no D linemen. That's a strong statement.
So of those people you name, I'm thinking one of those receivers drops.
Oh, okay.
Because the wide receiver class is so deep. And if you've got, we realistically have 7 teams that need a QB yesterday.
Right.
Realistically.
Okay.
So 3 of those teams are picking in the top 5. You've got
right.
The Bears, who are taking Caleb. They're not QB needy, but they're taking a generational talent, some believe, in Caleb Williams. Number 2, personally, I think Jaden Daniels is QB2, but everyone loves Drake May. So I've got him slotted at 2. I think Jaden Daniels goes to 3 to the Patriots. His running ability is gonna kind of mask a lot of lack of talent they have up front. So now we're looking at who else is in the top 10 that may need a quarterback. Atlanta, depending on what free agency does. The Raiders, Pittsburgh, Denver, and I'm missing one.
Minnesota, but we're in
Minnesota. Yeah.
If they don't sign Cousins.
Yeah, if they don't re-sign Cousins.
Yeah.
So you got 5 teams that really need a starting quarterback. I don't think JJ makes it after his workout at the combine because he threw well. He's going to throw again at the pro day. He's super young, and we all know if you don't get the quarterback position right, you're not going anywhere.
That's the GM that and owner and team that drafts J.J. McCarthy in the first round better make doggone sure that's what they're. I just think that's a reach in the first 10 picks of the draft. But let me back up. Not a reach, but a gamble.
Yeah,
willing to gamble, rolling the dice. Who knows? That you just had me raise my eyebrows on that. I do not call me on guard.
I do not think J.J. McCarthy is a top 10 talent in this draft. But I just sat there and watched 15 wide receivers run a 4.4 or better. So if I'm a team and I'm saying, okay, I can get one of the top 5 QBs, then come back in the second and get a really, really good wide receiver, it's all about value at this point. You get that quarter, because let's say McCarthy hits, you get that 5th year under that rookie contract. That's big too.
I need everybody to write this down so we can come back a year or two from now and tells Jay that was the dumbest comment you ever made, or man, that was smart. You were way ahead of your time.
We shall see. But we've seen guys like E.J. Manuel go first round, Christian Ponder. Notice I'm naming all those Florida State busts right there. But we've seen guys go top 10, top 15 that we didn't necessarily think that they would. So I'm just saying it's not a stretch.
Bold statement. I love it.
Not a stretch.
I love it.
So moving on to the offensive line, we've got a ton of great. This is another deep class of offensive tacklers and interior linemen. Who's the guy for you? Who's number one?
No, Joe Alt, no doubt.
Joe Alt's number one for you?
He's a freak. But again, people will say I'm a homer, but Amarius Mims is going to be an unbelievable NFL talent.
So he's two for you?
Yes.
I'm going to surprise you with my top. J.C. Latham.
Yeah, I could see that.
I was watching this guy move with that sled with ease.
I could see that.
And then you look at him, he's built like Luke Cage. I was telling Charmer last week, I say, man, this dude is built like a superhero. No fact. J.C. Latham is my number one. I like Joe Alt. I think those Notre Dame linemen, they always have long careers in the NFL. You can't go wrong. But ceiling, for me, it's definitely J.C. Latham, number one, based on his ceiling. Joe Alt, number two. And the kid from Oregon State, Fuaga, got him number three.
Okay.
I watched him maul, who was that, earlier this season? Washington State, when they were both undefeated. And I just watched this guy push a guy 20 yards on a touchdown run. I was like, oh, yeah, he's definitely going to New York. He's definitely going to the Jets. So those are my guys. Anyone else you like on the offensive line?
I don't know a whole lot about the big uglies other than those top three or four. But it's some, offensive, that line is important, because if you don't have that line, then the quarterback, I don't care how good he is, he's no good to you on his back. So
look at my Jaguars.
Yeah.
We crumbled down the stretch because Trevor Lawrence, he kept taking hits.
Yep.
He kept taking hits. And so trust me, as a Jaguars fan, I understand that statement. Well, we've reached about 30 minutes here, and I know you are a busy man. So is there anything else we should touch on before we go?
I would like to touch on one thing that I know was a hot topic here a couple of months ago. And I can't pass it up to talk about it, because I've taken a lot of heat from some friends of mine that tell me that I'm out of touch with reality when it comes to the college football game of today. And that is the opt-outs in the bowl games. It pisses me off. I'm old school in the fact that, when you are fortunate enough to get an opportunity to get a free education at a higher institution, and you go and they are paying for you to get this education, then I feel like that you owe that school a little something as far as your dedication to that school, to your program, to your teammates, to your coaches. Now, I could hear everybody, yeah, but they're making all this money. Well, that's why we've got NIL now in place, okay? And so, to me, the guys that are getting to the point to where I'm not going to play in the bowl game, I'm going to opt out, because it's better for me to do that for my future. It tells me two things. It tells me, one, that I don't not get that, okay? I do understand that. But it also tells me that you are bigger than your team, your teammates, your school, and your coaches. That it's more about you as a person instead of the team. And to me, college football has been the consummate team sport for many, many years. Getting away from that now, it's becoming more individualized because of NILs, transfer portal, this type thing. But don't tell me that the only reason guys opt out is to save themselves for the draft, and because, why play in a meaningless game? When did college football start playing meaningless exhibition games?
I'll say this about the Florida State-Georgia situation. That was not a meaningless game.
No, it wasn't. Florida State had every opportunity to go out and prove all the naysayers wrong. They had a very good ball club. Now, the quarterback's out, that changes things. But go out and put your best foot forward and show the country, this is what we're about. This is our culture. This is, but instead, to me, what Florida State did was they said, if we can't play for the national championship or be in the playoffs like we're supposed to be, then we don't care.
They took their ball and they went home.
They went home.
That's exactly what they did.
Georgia was in the same boat. How many players opted out for Georgia in a meaningless ball game in that game?
I don't.
That's all I'm going to ask.
Yeah. I think most of those guys who opted out, there were health concerns. Like Bowers didn't play because of health. I think it was. And I think McConkey tried to play and just couldn't finish it out.
People were telling me this, well, Georgia ran up the score. No, Georgia played the game like it's supposed to be played, and they did what they were supposed to do.
And they sent a message to recruits. I thought Florida State missed the boat simply because you have an undefeated season. First of all, how many undefeated seasons have they had in their history? I want to say 2. No, Charlie Ward didn't go undefeated. Chris Weinke went undefeated, and Jameis Winston went undefeated.
Jay, I'll tell you this. Florida State should have been in the playoff. Could they have competed without their quarterback? Probably not. But according to the way college football playoffs are set up, they're a Power 5 conference champion, undefeated in the regular season. They checked every single box that the playoff committee supposedly had in place to be a playoff team. They checked every box.
They did.
They should have been in. It would have been a TCU debacle like it was maybe, but we don't know because all I heard was that our defense we didn't see that against Georgia, so nobody knows. But all I kept hearing was we could have competed because our defense was that good. If that's the case, then why not go show that in the Georgia game instead of giving up nearly 70 points?
And here's my thing. I understand a guy like Jared Verse not playing. He's top 15 pip. I get it. But when there were a lot of those guys who weren't even projected to be draft picks. And it's like you're playing the best team in the country. On paper, they are the best team in the country. Top to bottom NFL guys, up and down. You go out there and you show out against them, and you're the reason why they win the game. Maybe you go from an undrafted free agent to a 4th-round pick. That's how these things work. There is a recency bias. You can't tell me that J.J. McCarthy doesn't get this hype train going if he loses to Alabama and he loses ugly.
Here's my thing. How many players opted out for Florida State? I don't know the exact number.
It was over 30.
Okay. So I was thinking around 20. So let's just use 20. Can someone tell me the most players drafted from one particular school, what that number is? I think it's 14. So you're telling me that there is 20 plus guys at Florida State that opted out for the NFL draft? No more than, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say no more than about 10 or 12 of those guys are even going to be drafted in the entire draft. So again, that argument holds no water with me.
That's what I'm saying. It was crazy to see some of the opt-out names. Now, maybe it is a culture thing because I have pointed to FSU's culture a few times. Even though you had an undefeated season, how many of those impact players are coming back?
And the thing is, Jay, I really like LSU. I'm not an FSU. I'm not an FSU hater. But what got me riled up was the fact that, yes, Georgia did play them, but I kept hearing from my guy, it's just a meaningless game. Why would we want to play in and that drives me crazy because in competitive athletics, the only meaningless games to me in today's world are the NBA All-Star Game, the NHL All-Star Game, the Pro Bowl in the NFL, and to an extent, the MLB All-Star Game. Every time you lace up those cleats or those tennis shoes, regardless of the sport, it's competitive.
It means something.
It should mean something. So the day your program tells you that this doesn't mean anything, to me, that's a big time culture issue.
And you can point to the recruiting.
And I'm not just talking about Florida State. I'm talking about any school that were to say that it is a culture issue.
But I heard boosters saying it was a meaningless game, right? So for me, it's like, okay, if you're FSU, yeah, you got hosed. You did. But if you go in that game and let's say it's a close game, you barely lose, but you barely lost to the best team in the country. That recruit that's sitting at home trying to decide whether to go to Georgia or FSU, that dog, that guy who's actually going to make a difference for you and don't want to be around a loser, he may have went to FSU if you went out there and showed what you were about. But by going out there and crying about it, that dog, that life changer for your program is now going somewhere else because he doesn't want to be around a place where it's okay to lose.
You know,
there are still players that exist.
There are a few. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot. But yes, there are a few. And your comment, I agree with to an extent. But also, unfortunately, the college football game we're a part of now, and I'm going to take a shot at you, a parting shot at you as I end this, just because I think it's a kind of funny parting shot. In today's college football world, if we take the number one recruit in all of high school football, and it comes down to the Georgia Bulldogs, perennial national championship contender. It's between you and the Miami Hurricanes, who have not been relevant in the national championship picture for however many years. Guess what? In today's college football landscape, Miami has as good a chance at getting this number one recruit as the Georgia Bulldogs do because of the almighty dollar and the NIL.
That's true. But I think when you're dealing with like prime example, JoJo Trader,
okay,
right? Recruit coming into Miami this year. Yeah, he gets the NIL money, but for everything I'm hearing about this guy, hey, we're about to bring Miami back to my dad's era, because he's a local kid. He grew up seeing the Ed Reed, seeing the Andre Johnsons of the world. So for a guy like him, okay, I can get the money and I can restore this brand. Think about it. If you're the guy in the NIL era who restores the Miami Hurricane brand, oh, you're good forever.
I'll give you a great example. Dylan Raiola, committed to Georgia. Best college let's face it, best college football program overall in America right now in today's world. But he goes to Nebraska. When was the last time Tommy Frazier, was that the last? Does anybody even know who Tommy Frazier is other than me? Nebraska has not been relevant, and people will say it's because of his family and, come on now.
Oh,
it's all about the dollar.
The head coach, Matt Rule, got on live television and said it's going to cost us $2 million.
It's all about the dollar, and that's what I hate about college football today. But you're right. Your Miami Hurricanes are going to be relevant again because you guys have as much money to spend as anybody else in the entire country. You mark my word, over the next 5 years, Miami, Texas, those two schools, and if Texas A&M would ever figure out how to get out of their way, would be another one. USC, these are schools with all this money that are going to rise back up because the NIL is going to do, if nothing else, is going to level the playing field of college football again. You're not going to have, there is never going to be an Alabama dynasty or a Florida State dynasty, or even let's go back to the Miami dynasty of yesteryear. Never going to happen again, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think dynasties can still happen because you do have a dynasty.
They have to spend a lot of money.
Right, yeah. You have to spend the money. You got to get the players in there, but it's also a culture situation. Like Kirby Smart, the way he recruits, the way his players are willing to run through a wall for him, you can't manufacture that with money.
True.
So it's going to be interesting to see. I know we've got to wrap this up soon. You got things to do. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Thompson, friend of the show, owner of Grand Slam Sports. You can check out all of those awesome baseball tournaments here locally at Panama City Beach and other places. But we'll let you get online and check that out. And this is Jay with Let's Argue with Jay Playhard, and good day.